All right, guys. So for this lecture, we're going to take a little bit of a look at an introduction to the digestive system itself. This little kind of caricature here kind of shows you the basic processes that kind of take place. So as up here at the top would be your mouth and esophagus. So that's a mechanical process you can kind of see here. This little tube is supposed to represent your esophagus. This right here would represent your stomach, where the acid and things kind of help break that down. Once it leaves the stomach, then it goes into the small intestine, and there are a set of organs that really kind of help us here, both the liver, gallbladder, as well as the pancreas. This set of tubing is then supposed to represent both your small and large intestine, and then finally the last stop in the process would be the rectum. All right, so it does a fairly good job of that, kind of representing the basic processes of digestion here. This was the link to the document that you guys looked at for class yesterday. If you had any trouble with that, the link is in here in the PowerPoint. You can take a look at that again. I'll post, like I always do, both a recorded lecture as well as the PowerPointed lecture in Google Classroom for you. All right. So digestive really kind of goes into two basic processes here. We have digestion itself as well as metabolism. So digestion is just simply the breaking down of food and then absorbing whatever nutrients are into that food into the bloodstream. Metabolism, on the other hand, then is taking those materials that were broken down by digestion and converting them into either materials that the bodies can use or breaking out, taking and releasing the energy that's stored within those through cellular respiration to kind of drive the body or produce enough ATP specifically. This is all kind of back to regular bio, if you guys remember that, or if you're in AP bio right now, you might have also talked a little bit about metabolism as well. But we're going to spend most of our time talking mostly about digestion. We'll touch a little bit on metabolism later on, right? There are four basic processes that kind of make up the digestive or the digestive system is responsible for. Obviously, ingestion, digestion, which then there are two basic processes of digestion, both mechanical as well as chemical, absorption, and then finally the last stop on the process, which is defecation. Okay, ingestion is simply just getting food into the mouth, all right, by way of either solid or liquid processes. All right. Propulsion then is moving those foods along from one region of the digestive system to the next. So once you swallow something, it goes into your esophagus and then is moved along that tube down towards the stomach. Um, so once you chew everything, it actually becomes what's referred to as a bolus. So what you're actually swallowing is a bolus of food. So when you chew it up mechanically in your mouth and then swallow it down your esophagus, it then becomes a bolus. The process by which it moves along the digestive system pretty much is what's referred to as peristalsis. This is just the alternating process of contractions within the either esophagus or small or large intestine that's trying to move food from one portion of the digestive system to the next portion of the digestive system. It can also do what's referred to as segmentation. So not only just moving it forward, but once it gets into the small and large intestine, it can actually be moved forward and backwards, which will aid in kind of mixing that food up and further breaking it down. Absorption then is another process that we took a look at. So this is kind of the breaking everything down that was digested so that can be absorbed. So we're taking things like carbohydrates, fats, lipids, and proteins, breaking those down into pieces that can then be absorbed into the bloodstream. So food then kind of enters those steps and then breaks it down, and it's really picked up by both blood and lymph capillaries at that point because they're kind of dotted along the entire digestive system. Defecation is just this basic process of kind of getting rid of anything that was non-digestible. So this could be things like fibrous material, or there are some times where the body just doesn't digest fats well, doesn't digest enough protein because we're bringing in more protein than can be kind of absorbed. But those are your basic processes there for the digestive system. Um, Kind of looking at the basics of digestion, we talked to kind of briefly when we went through that. There are two kind of basic processes of digestion itself. So there is mechanical, or what's referred to as physical digestion, and chemical digestion. Physical digestion or mechanical is just like it sounds. So it's breaking things down into smaller pieces by either us chewing The tongue also aids in that process by moving things around and kind of helps smush them and break them down. The basic process of peristalsis and segmentation also helps that, kind of breaking those pieces down. But the smaller we can get them into, the easier it is for the second process to kind of do its job, which is chemical digestion. This is where those digestive enzymes really go in and try to help break those pieces down even further and actually take them apart at the at the chemical level. So we're now breaking apart large macromolecules, if you remember back to bio. So like carbohydrates are made of kind of simple carbohydrates, monosaccharides, and we need to break those pieces down into all of those so the body can then kind of put them back together the way that they need them. So mechanical digestion a little bit further here, just mixing of the food in the mouth and tongue. It can also happen in the stomach. That's why our stomach makes all those kind of noises, because it's actually helping churn that. The stomach has its own muscle kind of lining on the inside. And then finally, once we get into the small intestine, we're doing more of this segmentation, which is also sometimes why you can hear digestive noises in someone's abdomen after or before they've kind of eaten, because all that process is kind of taking place. Chemical digestion, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, is mostly enzymes. So those are those proteins that help us break those larger molecules down into their building blocks. So we're breaking carbohydrates down into simple sugars, those monosaccharides, the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. We're breaking those proteins down into the simple amino acids because the body has its own proteins it needs to make. And by breaking those amino acids, breaking the proteins down into amino acids, then the body can assemble the exact protein that it needs. Fats and are also can be broken down into both kind of fatty acids and what are referred to as alcohols. All right, but again, the body needs these pieces to be able to rebuild tissue, put things back together. Specifically with carbohydrates, we need those for cellular respiration. So we really need the simple carbohydrates, the glucose, and so on, specifically glucose, to kind of use to make ATP out of. All right, but that's the basic process here. So we'll take a little bit of a look at tomorrow for kind of some workbook pages that will kind of go back over this. There's also a little bit of a kind of drag and drop that helps a little bit with this, and then we'll kind of move a little bit further into some of the organs later on in the week.